Hello everybody. I'm going to do a quick tutorial on what I like about certain inks. I don't have them all, but yesterday I was having a discussion with a friend about inks and what their uses are. I've used a lot of different inks in the years that I've been stamping, crafting, you name it. I'm talking years. But I've always seemed to stick to the same ones and donate the others. So, but the basic thing that you need to know is the difference between a dye ink and a base ink. All right? The ink is ink, but there's a dye ink and there's a pigment ink. The dye ink, which would be Memento inks, it'll say right on it, dye ink, Stampin' Up! Is dye ink, archival ink is dye ink. What it is these kind of inks will go, they're water based, and they will go through your paper. In other words, when you stamp on it, the ink goes through the fibers and you see your image. It would be almost like an ink jet printer versus a laser printer, if you want to compare it that way. Pigment inks would be the laser part of it, laser print, if it makes any sense to you. And what a pigment is it sits on top of the paper, like a laser print would print on top. It is an ink that is, you can put on any smooth surface, stays on. I'm trying to think of a way to say to you that, like, these inks are inks that would go on like they're slower drying. The pigments are fine particles that are in it of color, so it's mixed with liquid medium, and that's what makes it so special. You can put this on metal, you can put it on glass, plastic, laminated paper if you wanted to, ceramics. That's why in the stamping world we use it on, let's say, acetate, anything of that sort. That's what we would use, because once it's dry, it's permanent, and it's very slow drying though, but it will stay on the paper. Now, another thing about this pigment ink is that if you're working on dark paper, sometimes if you want the color to really show vibrantly, you will use a pigment ink, because the pigment will sit on top of the paper. So let's say, for an instance, you're using a dark blue paper and you want to use a light blue stamp pad. Well, if you use a pigment ink, the color's going to sit on top and it's going to cover the navy blue. So you are going to see the color. It's going to keep it vibrant. If you use a dye base ink, it's going to soak into the paper and you're not going to see it as well. It's going to make the color kind of opaque. Make sense to you? Those are the two most important things really about ink that you should know, is the difference between a dye base ink and a pigment ink. A dye base sucks into the paper fibers, and a pigment ink will stay on top. Although it takes longer to dry, it dries 3 to 5 minutes depending on the ink. That's what makes the difference. Now, having said that, I have different inks here. I have a hybrid ink. It's the same thing. This is a hybrid ink, is a all-purpose craft ink. It's something new that's out. So this one here, it's the best of both. So I could use this palette hybrid ink pad if I wanted to watercolor. If you use a dye base ink pad, what happens when you watercolor, it'll smear because it's water kind of activated. Okay? You could use a hybrid ink pad. I bought this one quite a while ago now, but it's not, I don't think it's a brand that you see too often, but it's non-fading. It's it's an all-purpose crafting, blending the best of both pigment and dye inks into one ink pad, and fine arts look like pigment but dry, the dye ink dry. Okay, so that would be for this one here. Now we all know about Stays On Jet Black. We all use it, and it says it right here. On a cleaning surface, it dries in 3 to 5 minutes on non-porous surfaces. Okay, and we normally use something like this in order to be on glass, or like I said a while ago, acetate and stuff like that. Now, this here is a solvent ink, and the Stays On opaque solvent ink is like a chalk ink. So it'll do very well by sitting on top of the paper versus having to be sucked into the fibers. So being in a pigment ink, it keeps it nice and vibrant. If it's opaque, it's kind of chalky looking. So you want it to have as much brilliance as you can get out of a chalk paint. So that's what that is. Versamark Magic. It's a multi-surface chalk ink. Again, you can use this on anything. It's an opaque pigment ink, so it sits on top, and it gives a permanent powder finish, even on dark papers. So if you remember that the pigment ink sits on top of the paper, when you're looking at ink, it doesn't matter what brand, what it is, you'll know that it sits on top and not into the paper. Distress Oxide and Distress Inks. These are two very, very popular inks right now. We know Tim Holtz, everything he does is like a no fail. The vintage photo ink, that is a dye ink. So that will go into the fibers. That is why, and it's water reactive, as you know. So you know that if you add some of this and spray some water over it, it's going to, it's going to spread onto the paper. You can put 2-3 colors and spray it off, and it's all going to mix together. It's a dye ink. Distress Oxide, on the other hand, is a pigment ink. And this is why that the Distress Oxide, you can put one layer, and then you can put another layer of another color, and it'll sit on top of that color. Therefore, it'll cover where you're going to stamp it on top of the other color. It's not going to blend in with that color. It's going to sit on top, therefore covering what you just did. Now, if you use two dye ink, when you put one on top of another, the part that doubles up is going to blend because it's going to suck into the fibers with each other. It's not going to sit on top of each other. This is why it's two different inks altogether. Watermark, we all know what Watermark is. Versamark, sorry. It definitely, it's a versatile ink, so to speak. It's a stamp pad, it's for embossing and so forth. It's a clear embossing ink is what it is. And really all it is, it's vegetable glycerin, and you can re-ink it yourself. So that's all that is inside here. Mine is pretty messy. I have a couple. I use it all the time. But if you use vegetable glycerin and put it in a pad, I mean, this is what you have. You have exactly the same thing. But it's clear embossing ink, so you can use it every day for heat embossing, resisting, or, you don't have to wash it or wash it off your stamps because really it's glycerin, so it'll actually condition your stamps. So it's really something that should be in your arsenal, because if you're a card maker, scrapbook paper, mixed media, whatever, this type of thing is something that's very, very nice to have. Now, you need to clean your stamps. There is Stays On. Stays On is for any pigment ink to clean off your stamp. I don't have a DIY recipe for this one. I was told that all you needed to do was add mineral oil instead of vegetable oil, and on the same recipe as making your own stamp cleaner, but I have not tried it. So there's tons and oodles of things on the internet, so I suppose if you really wanted to make your own, you could clean it up. Okay? As far as the stamp cleaner, I've been making my own for years. It's really, really simple to make. All you need to make your own stamp cleaner, I'm going to give you a recipe to make a small bottle. I made a big jug, but it'll last you forever. Now, this is what you would spray on your stamps or into your stamp cleaning pad, if you have one of those. If, let's say you have one of those stamp cleaning pad. Wait, I suppose if I pulled it, you know, this is what you would use to wet your stamp cleaning pad and then dry it over here. The recipe for you, the ingredients is you would use 2 tablespoons. You mix this together in a spray, and add it to a spray bottle, or mix it in a spray bottle, really doesn't matter. 2 tablespoons of liquid glycerin. Liquid glycerin you'll find normally at a pharmacy. That's where I buy mine. You probably could find it in Walmart, into the where they sell the first aid, you know, pharmaceutical stuff. 1 tablespoon of baby shampoo. Smells yummy. But again, buy baby shampoo. You don't have to buy Johnson & Johnson. Just buy baby shampoo at the dollar store. It'll work. One important ingredient is distilled water. Now, you could boil your water. I don't know if it make a difference. I've bought a bottle of distilled water. It wasn't expensive enough. I bought it. And I bought it at the drugstore when I went to the drugstore to get my glycerin. So 2 tablespoons of liquid glycerin, 1 tablespoon of baby shampoo, 7 ounces of distilled water, 8-ounce spritzer bottle. That's what it'll fill up. Now, if you wish, you can buy some rose water. That again is, you can buy that at the drugstore or Walmart, I suppose. It's up to you. It's not necessary. The glycerin and baby shampoo and distilled water pretty much does the trick. And you just need to shake it well. And it works very, very well. To me, that works as good as going to pay $5 or $6 or $7, whatever they sell them for now, little spritzy bottles like this. So go to where you travel, on the travel solutions are, you know how you can buy your toothbrush holder and all that, the little travel packs. Get yourself a little spritz bottle. I'm trying to think. I know I have one here somewhere, but instead of paying like $10 or whatever this is for Tim Holtz one. Okay, what I did, I did a sample of different inks that I have that I use, just to show you the difference. If you notice, well, I did all 4 images plus 1 in the back. This I did with the Stays On. I did an alcoholic marker there, which is Copic. I did a water marker there. And here I did a bit of watercoloring. Nothing smudged. Nothing, whether it was alcohol, water marker, or watercolor. This one here I used the Ranger Archive, which is this one. Oops, this one. The first one was this one, as you know. Everybody knows it stays on here. This one here is the Archival ink. Same thing. Alcohol, water marker, watercolor, no smudge. The palette ink, which is this one, same thing. No smudge anywhere on the three. The Memento, which you know which one that is, this one here, same thing. Alcohol, water, watercolor. I even went over some of the lines to see if it would pick up. No smudge, nothing. So what I'm getting at is it doesn't matter how you paint your images, these particular ink pads, which are all the ones that are a mixture of, so you can do both dye and pigment in it. There's both dye and pigment ink into both, a little bit of both. You can use those no matter what type of coloring you're going to do. Now, on the other hand, I didn't have any black, but I did use my early espresso dye ink to do an image. This is all 110 cardstock, by the way, and it smudged. It smudged not the alcohol ink as much, and I really rubbed it here. It didn't do anything there. It made the black ink become very opaque. You can tell there's something on top. The water, this is the water marker. Wasn't so bad because the water wasn't as runny, but here you can tell all on the bottom where all the water and the ink mixed. So as I said earlier, if you're going to do any printing on a stamp, if you're going to do any stamping with an image, and you're going to use some coloring other than pencils, obviously pencils, it wouldn't matter, but I would really suggest that you use any one of these four that I have used and I've experienced in. Hope this has inspired you in some way to keep going, and I hope it gave you some clarity. If you have any questions, give me a shout. I'm always there for you, and this is Yvonne, and I'm signing off. Have a great creative day.